Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is David. Today I'm going to show you how to build this amazing and dynamic personal portfolio website using Nextjs. So when you first look at this website, you'll be looking at the hero section. On this hero section, you will see your personal name and a brief description of yourself. This brief description includes some of JavaScript skills that will allow you to auto type the letters and auto change to another word. So when you look at the side, there's the navigation bar. Different from the typical project, the navigation menu of this project is on the left-hand side. So when you hover on it, you will see this amazing hover effect. And when you click on one of those navigation, it will lead you to that section straight away. As you can see, this is the About section we are going to build with your personal details, birthday, and all the contact and addresses, your current position. So when you're going down here, if I refreshed it, you will see we have now the facts section with a bit of a counter. So this is how many projects you have done. Anything you want to present to your viewer in numbers, you can do in this way. So, and also, when this thing first gets loaded on the browser, you will see that loading effects comes out with the number counting up from 0 to that number. This is a third-party library called ContUp we are going to use to build this section. All right. So the skill section is the same. So when you first refresh it, you will see this one. The progressive bar starts from the 0% to the percentage you have set for it. Right? It has that amazing cool animations on it. So the next part is going to be the resume section, where you can put up your personal resume, you give yourself a brief summary, your education background, your professional experiences, so on and so forth. Really amazing with all of those bullet points and also the period you have been working for, and also those detailed instructions. Right? So we're going to build this one as well. And next to it is going to be the portfolio. So on this portfolio, you will see that it's a good position to demonstrate the work you have done in a grilled way. And when you click on those buttons, it allows you to filter to the project, the type of project you have built. It could be an application, on a web project, on a graphical design. All right. So not only with these, but also if you click on the plus sign on each individual image, it will show you that zoom in effect of that project image with this arrow button that allows you to change one to another. All right. When you click on this cross button, that one goes away. Okay. So, and also on the second one, it creates a link. So when you click on this link, it actually takes you to that specific page to introduce the user how this project works with some demonstration image like a carousel, and also the project information, and also this is the project description as well. Okay, this actually comes from a second page that we have built for this project. So if I turn on my browser and I type in the route, say for example I opened up a new one, I say localhost 3000 /portfolio/1, it actually takes you to that first item portfolio single page. All right, this is the page that I built. However, with some third-party library called GlightBox, it will allow you to present that page on the same page of the home page. So it wouldn't lead you to the second page. Alternatively, you can see this project page directly through this Modal. This effect was provided by the third-party library called GlightBox, which is really, really amazing. And this way, imagine your potential employers looking at your profile. You probably do not want to let him to lose the focus on your page. So this way, we'll open up your project description straight away on the same page. And once he finishing the scrolling, he can close off and keep browsing to the rest of your project. All right. So, but if the user do want to go to a separate page to see it, the separate page is there. Okay. So that's the highlights for the portfolio section. And also for the service section, we have this amazing SCV CSS hover effects on it with those cool card and box effects shadow. All right, we're gonna build that. The testimonial includes a bit of a swiper. We're gonna use a third-party library called Swiper.js to build this one. You can either use your mouse to swipe it, or you can use the finger. If you're looking at your mobile phone, you can use the finger to swipe it. That's absolutely okay. For the context section, what we're gonna do is that this part, when you input your information, it will allow you to send a post request to the backend, so the user's contact details and contact messages can be sent to your backend database. So to demonstrate that for you, what I'm going to do is that I'll show you this localhost /API/contact. Refresh it. So far, we only have one storage, which is an example contact message in our database, and you can see that this thing has been brought to us in the API endpoint as a JSON format, right? So, but when you create a new contact message, supposedly we should have one more contact object being added into this JSON array. Let's see if it works. So, for example, I just type in my personal name. This is an example email, not a real one. Some demonstration subjects, and create a simple fake message. And now if you send this message, you will see this successful response has been popped back, saying that your message has been sent successfully. And if you look at the backend and you refresh it, you will see the one that I just posted has been added into our JSON array at the backend routes. So that basically means that our contact message has been posted successfully. All right. So I refresh this a bit. And also, this contact forms involves the form validation. If I try to send a message without filling in any details, it pops up with an error. Please fill in the above details. All right. So as soon as I start to type, that error message goes away. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to create all of this amazing form validation and post requests in this project. It is a sort of like a full stack project. We do have the backend routes to be built to serve all this dynamic data on the front end. Right. This code, this text rows, all of the data on the front end page, like this resume and also the portfolio data, are not hard-coded. It's fetched from the backend API endpoint routes. All right. So if you're excited about this project, please subscribe to my channel, like it, and share it. So let's just open up your code editor and start to build it right now. So to start off this project, what you need to do is to open up your terminal on your laptop. And then once you open it up, you just need to key in npx create next app. So this is like the routine way of creating a Next.js project. Normally we're going to add something after it, saying add latest. And then you'll get the latest version of the Next.js. And after that, it's going to be your personalized project name. So here we're just going to name it something like a personal profile website. So something like that. And then you hit enter. As soon as you hit enter, it will start to ask you, would you like to use TypeScript in this project? We're going to use TypeScript, yes. Would you like to use Slint? Yes. Are you going to use Tailwind? We're not going to use Tailwind for this project because we're using Bootstrap. So we'll hit no. Do you want a source directory? Yes. Do you want an app router? Yes. And do you have any of those aliens? No. So once we hit all of those things, it's going to build up this project for you. As you can see, the progressive bar is running. So I'm just going to pause the video for now and see, oh, that one runs really quick. We don't have to pause the video. So now the project has been successfully built. And as you can see, success. So now to open up this project, you just need to get into the directory of your project by saying cd, means change directory. And then you need to remember the project name you just created yourself. I created it as personal profile website. So we cd into that. Then you can see the directory name has been changed here. And then you're just going to open up this project in your code editor by saying code space period enter. And now your code editor will open up this for you. So I'm just going to expand this for you to see it clearly. Yep. So now we're in the project folder. So what we're going to do next is to briefly introduce how this thing works and what this folder is for. You don't have to worry so much about the first folder, which is the Node modules, because inside these folders are all the third-party libraries or dependencies that is going to be used inside the project. And you don't have to worry about the public folder, but eventually all the data, all the pages will be wrapped into this public folder and serve it onto your browser. But if you do have any images or have any static files, pictures, videos that you want to use in this project, the best place to store those are inside this public folder. And the thing that you need to concern the most is the source folder, because the source folder contains all of your code files. Say for example, this layout file that wraps up the entire layout of your project, which is a typical HTML text with the body wrapped inside it. And also all the things you write must be eventually compiled or loaded into this page file. So these are the two files that is most important for this project. And also, to quickly start up this project, what we're going to do is to open up your terminal inside the code editor by keying Control plus backtick, Control backtick, and then you just want to say npm run dev. So in that way, your code will be run, because we do have the localhost 3000 running for my existing project. This is the one that I built already for demonstration purpose for you to see the whole thing. So if you have the localhost 3000 running, and the new project will be run automatically on localhost 3001. But if you are following me, coding along, your project is supposed to be running on localhost 3000. Click hold your command key or control key and click on this one, and you will have this project opened up on your browser. As you can see, that's the typical Next project preview. Going back here, and what we're going to do next is going to install some dependencies for us to build this project in the most smooth way. So the best way to do is to click on this plus sign to open up the new terminal. Leave the old one on, do not close this off, but we need a new one to install some dependencies. As you can see, there's a file called package.json down the bottom. All the dependencies so far that has been installed are loaded here. It tells you that we have this dependencies of React, React DOM, and also the Next. So those are 3 dependencies, and we also have those TypeScripts and other things as a dev dependency installed here. Okay, but this is not enough. We're gonna install more. So to install more, we're just gonna say npm I for install. The first one we're gonna install is called Bootstrap. So we say Bootstrap, and then we're gonna use the Bootstrap icon for this project as well. So we're gonna install Bootstrap -icons, and then we're gonna use another icon called a box icon. So we say box icon, and we're gonna use something called a GlightBox. So we say GlightBox, and other than that, we're gonna use a package called React countup to set up a counter for this project. So we say React countup. That's one of those, and also we're gonna use the another library called React typed. So this is the one that is going to be used for this one. It's automatic typing effects. This is being achieved by the third-party library called React typed. And then the last one we're going to install is called Swiper. So far it looks good to me. We're going to install all of these packages. Hit enter. It's going to install that for us. And if we miss something out during the developing process, I'm going to come back to the package.json and install more. Okay, but so far it looks all good for me. And now you can see these packages, as soon as you install them, they are added into the dependency list. Okay, and also the node module will be updated automatically as well, because the node module will be set up according to the package.json file. All right, so now we have this one done. We can delete the second terminal but leave the first one on and close it off. Okay, so that's the setup for the project before we officially start. We have the packages all installed. Close this one off. And the next job is to have a bit of a setup to our layout, because we have installed all the dependencies, but we haven't got a chance to import them. Right? Simply installing them is not enough. You can't use them inside your project unless you have to import them. So the first thing I'm going to import is the Bootstrap thing. So just give me that. So here we say we'll import all of those icons. We import the Bootstrap icon. We import the box icon as well. And the second thing is going to be the Bootstrap itself. So we import the Bootstrap CSS. And then we're going to import the GlightBox, like so. So far we imported 3. And the next one we want to do is to simply change some project name. This metadata is the same metadata in your HTML tags. All right. So if you want to have your application title changed, you can type your customized name here. So we're just going to say maybe personal profile Next.js app, something like so. It's up to you. And then the next job is going to put in our customized Google fonts in our project. The Google fonts we're going to use is not the Inter, and alternatively we're going to use this one. It's called Railway. So we're not going to use the Inter. But you know that once you import the next Google font from it, you have to create a sort of like a variable to define this font, right? So here it used the customized the default Inter, but we have to change to our own fonts, which is the Railway, the one we just imported, and save it. So now maybe you can rename it to something else as well to make it consistent, something like a Railway. Yeah. So now once you save it, this thing has been successfully injected, and you know that we do want this one to be put into our body. So here, instead of saying inter.className, we say railway.className. You import it first, and then you define it, and then you use it over here. Alright, that's how you set up your Google font in the Next.js project. Alright, so the layout seems to me so far is all good, and the next job is for us to set up our page. So far, if you're going to our page, you will see this one. That looks a bit of a weird because we have installed a Bootstrap. That's why you get to see this gradient. But if I delete all of this main, all of this thing, and just simply type in a h1 tag by saying a personal profile app, something like that, and you will see this thing changes automatically, right? And another thing we want to define or set before we started off the building is the CSS file. So far, it's using the images and the styles from the Next packages. We don't need this. We're going to use our customized thing, so we delete all of those. And the global.css file is the CSS file that's going to be shared across the entire project. So what we're going to do here is if you want to have some a general settings for your entire application, say for example the titles, the anchor tags, or the bodies, you can put those things here. That'll make things much easier. So what I will do, I'll just copy and paste in some general settings, delete all the one completely, and copy and paste in the one that we want to set up for our project. For the body, we're gonna define the font family and the color. This is like a body's color. And for the anchor tag, we give it the same color, text decoration none, cursor point, and the hover effect for the anchor has also been defined here. For all the titles in the project from H1 to H6, we're gonna use the font family railway. And then we want to remove the scroll bar on the right hand side for the entire page. So we say body scroll bar display none. Right, for each section that we're going to build for this project, we're going to set up a universal paddings for all the sections and make sure the overflow is hidden. Okay, this is like the general settings for the project. So once we've done that, we're going to check where do we use this one. It's in the layout. In the layout, it imports the global.css, which is the one we set up here. That's why it's imported at the super global level and shared across the entire application over here. Okay, so this is the thing we need to set up before we do. So once that's done, I think we pretty much have done all the settings. We have done the installations, we have done the layout settings, the global CSS settings. The next job is going to be how do we build this project? If you look at it, to build a Next.js project or the React project, because essentially the Next.js is using React framework, you need to think the web development in a component way. You need to ask yourself how many components I'm going to have for this project. Are those components is going to be divided into some sub-component as well. So if you look at this the banner section or the hero, that comes to be your first section, which is a separate component for absolutely. And also, if you look at the navigation, that's also going to be a separate component, right? So each section at least represents itself to be a separate component. And inside each section, we're probably going to have some sub-components as well. Say, for example, as long as you can see something that is repeating, so long that thing could be a reusable component. Say, for example, this template in the facts. This count-up component contains the icon, a number, and a brief description. This one is the same logic, same template, right? So as long as they're repeating themselves, only the data changes, and so long this thing can be wrapped up as a separate component. Same for the skills, for the resumes. So the way to think about the web development is that how detailed you can be inside your brain to create different sort of components and detailed components, right? So because of that, before we start to type in the code, I'm going to create a few folders inside the application. One of the folders is called components, because we have mentioned it for many times. It's going to be used to store our subcomponents, right? Another folder is going to be called API, and we're going to build our backend code as well for this project. We use that API folder to load our backend API RESTful endpoint, right? So that's another one. And we do want to have some data to be served for this dynamic website, so we need a folder called data. For this one, I didn't set up a connection to the genuine database, so all the data we're going to use is going to be stored inside our data folder, all right? But we'll serve it on the backend as well. In a real project, it's only going to be a tiny modification for this one to be linked to the backend, which is really simple. Instead of connecting to your local static data, you just need to use your API to connect to your genuine database, say for example SQL or MongoDB or DynamoDB, Firebase, whichever one you use, and then the data will be fetched from there. It's the same logic. So we have those folders done, and then I also want to have another folder called sections. So this section folder is going to hold all of our sections on our home page. Alright, so that's that. And one more job, I told you at the very beginning of the video, if you do have some static files, static pictures, images, videos that is going to be used for this project, the best position to store those is in the public folder. Alright, so what I'm going to do is to copy and paste in the public folder. Inside here, I copy and paste in the assets folder. Inside the assets folder, it contains the images folder, and inside the images folder, it has all the images we're going to use now for this project. Alright, it's really handy. So now we have that done. I close that off. And by the way, you don't have to worry about the images and assets or the data. I'm going to share these things down the link in the description. You can download them straight away. Alright, you don't have to manually code along these things, which is really, really time consuming. So we have all the preparation job done. And now let's just get started to build our first component or the sections in our project. The first component that we're going to build for this project, if you look at this original one that I designed, is going to be the header, or say the navigation over here. Different from the typical project, our navigation for this project is on the left hand side, so we have a side menu. Alright, so we're going to build this one first. And then going back to our editor, inside our component folder, we create a new file called header.tsx. TS means the TypeScript file, but because we are using the React and the TypeScript, so we give it a specific file name called tsx that represents this is going to be a React project. Hit enter, and then you get into this file, RFC, to create a boilerplate that is very similar to our page, export default a function. This is what we call a functional component. If you don't have this shortcut working on your editor, what you need to do is go into your installation, and then you just need to install this one, ES7 React Native Snippet. And then once you install that, this thing should be working for you. Going back. And then the next thing we're going to do is to create another file called header.css. So now we have this component file and we have this coding CSS file. We're going to link these two together by saying import /header.css. As soon as you set this up, the CSS file will working purely for the component file only. Okay, so that's the first step. And then the next step, inside the header, we're going to create our navigation component as well. So for the component part, very quickly at the same time, we'll create a new file called nav.tsx. This one is going to be used to hold our navigation component, RFC, to create a boilerplate for that. And then at the same time, we're going to have nav.css. This is going to be a starting file. And we're going to link that starting file back to our nav. Alright, so now we have all the things set up. We'll close this one for now. We have the header. Inside the header, we're going to wrap our subcomponent navigation. So in that way, we don't have to put the header and the navigation all together. Alright, how are we going to set up our header? Our header is going to be a component using the HTML tag called header. This is very typical. And we're going to give the ID of header. And then we're going to give a class name called dflags. This is going to be the Bootstrap thing. If you are using Bootstrap and you want to have the flexible display, you don't have to set it up in a CSS. You can just type in a class name and the Bootstrap will do the flexible display for you. And we want it to be a flex column. That's the one. And then justify content center. So that's all. And then once you have that, we'll have our navigation ready. And inside our navigation, we're gonna inject our nav. So this is how we import our nav component into its parent component header. As you can see, this thing has been successfully imported. Everything looks fine now. So how do we know if this thing's working? Because so far in the nav, we only have the text was there. So to test it out, in the layout file, we're gonna put in this header. Because you think about it, this header is going to be shared on every single page of our project. So the best position to put it is inside our layout file. This children is going to be the dynamic body that you want to change according to different pages. And if you want to put in something that is static and going to be shared all through the project, it's better for you to put it into the layout file. So above the children, we say header, tab. So we import a header above the children, and then you can see this thing has been successfully imported. If we now going back to our project, as you can see, this is NAV, this 3-letter nav has been presented on the corner. That means that our header has been loaded in successfully. The reason why it only have 3 letters is because our navigation only contains 3 letters. That's for that. Alright. So the next job is for us to build our navigation component over here. To build this navigation, we're going to first think about the logic behind it. If you look at my original project, this navigation, each navigation button follows the same template. It contains an icon and also the navigation name. Alright, so this navigation includes some data. This data can be the icon style and also the name of the navigation. We're going to have to use some dynamic data to serve this navigation component instead of hard coding. And the way to do so is inside our data folder, we're going to create a file called data.ts. We're going to use this file to hold all of our data in this project. And the first data I'm going to hold in is going to be our nav data. So here, what I want to do is to copy and paste in the nav data I have built already. And as you can see, for each object inside the nav array, it contains the ID, it contains the name, the target. The target means that when you click on this navigation, which section is supposed to go. Alright, and the icon is the icon we're going to use, which is the box icon that we have installed at the very beginning of the video, and the active status of that navigation. Only the first one has been set to true by default. The remaining navigation are all set to false. And the reason is because only the one that is active have this blue background color. The remaining one all have this gray background color. Alright, so that's the active status for. And once we have done that, the next job is to do a data mapping. We're going to map this nav data into our component over here. And because we're doing the data mapping, it incurs the local state change. We're going to have to handle the state change of the local variable. We're going to import some state variables of the React hook. One is the use state, the other one is the use effect, like so. Because we are using this use state hook, we have to make this navigation component a client component. Some people asking what's the differences between the client component and another one called a server component in React.js. I'm just going to put it in a very simple way for you. The React component, the client component, if you want to use this one, and it's being used under the situation where you have some kind of interaction with the user gonna have a click events, or the user gonna have some mouse events to be triggered on your component. If you have that kind of interaction and the state is going to change on your DOM, you better use a client component to handle it. If you are serving a component that is static without incurring much user interaction, you can use a server component and the data will be ready from the server side. Nothing's going to be changed on the client side anymore. I'll show you how to build a server component as well in this project. So if you are confused so far, don't worry, we'll get to it very quickly. Alright, so far we have this thing set up. And the next thing I'm going to do is to set up few state variable. One is that to think about, we're going to get the data from this data file, right? This data.ts, the nav data has been exported. So we have to import this data into our navigation file, and then we're going to put it into our local state variable navs to hold this state variable data. And then to do so, we're just going to import the navs. Let's see if we can do that straight away. Yeah, we can. So we import the navs from the data, which is this one, and now we have the nav data ready. All right, and then we're going to set up a local state variable called const nav list, and set nav list equals to use state. And inside this use state hook, we're going to set up the initial value for this local state variable. The initial value is supposed to be the navs. So we say navs. So in this way, we can have this external static data served on our local state variable using that use state hook. Alright, this is the React way to do things. So once we have that, we can map this nav list data into our template underneath. And the way to do so, we just have to delete this. What I want to do is to create a nav tag, and we're going to give ID. This ID is going to be called a nav bar. And then we're also going to give it a class name, and the class name is going to be nav bar as well, and also nav menu. Alright, so we have that done. And then the next job is for us to do a data mapping. The data mapping is going to map that data, the nav's data, into our navigation list. So inside here, we create a list item. And inside that, we create a curly braces. Whenever you want to write JavaScript inside the HTMLs, you're going to have to wrap it with the curly braces. And then here we say nav list, which is our local state variable here, dot map. And inside this, we're going to give a arrow function. So we're going to map everything into our list item. And that list item is going to be a list. Inside the list, it contains a anchor tag. And this anchor tag, we're going to have the name of it and also the icon of it. All right. So inside the anchor tag, what we're going to say, we're going to have the icon with the class name that equals to the class name that we fetched from the data, which is this icon, right? So we put it here, nav.icon. And also after that, what we're going to do is going to use a span to hold our nav name. So here we say nav.name. So now we have this mapping done. You map your entire nav list array into the nav list object, and each nav object will be loaded into our list template, like so. Well, if you do want to wrap this thing into a separate component, you can. And you do need to understand that we're using this JavaScript higher order array function, the mapping, which allow you to map the data in a repetitive way, instead of writing the for loop, which is a very old cliche, and you can write your repeating stuff in the mapping way, which is more fancy. All right. So now we have that done. Next job is going to create some class name for anchor tag. So for this one, what I will do, I'll copy and paste in the class name for you because it's quite a lot of typing. It's going to be the JavaScript conditional class name. Firstly, we're going to have this nav link and a scroll tool as a static class name, but we do want the active one to be shown in a different color. So that's why we're asking if the nav is on an active status true. If it's true, we're going to show the active class name. Otherwise, it will be undefined. This one is going to be up to the active property, all right, for each object. If it's true, we're going to add on this active class name. If it's false, this active class name won't be added. It won't show, all right? And that's why only the first one will be shown as a blue one by default, because it's true. So far we have done the mapping. It looks to me not that bad. If I look at the browser, yeah, we have successfully done the mapping. As you can see in our current project, all the navigation icons and name has been successfully loaded, except we haven't done the styling for it. So our next job is going to close the data file, and I will share the data file in the end down the description link, so you don't have to worry about it. In the navigation CSS, what I'm going to do is to copy and paste in the styling for it and explain it for you. So we do want to have that paddings to be 0 for the nav menu, and we want the bullet point to go on, so the list style must be none, and we want that to have the position relative with no wrap, and we'll make sure that either on focus, the anchor tag have some display of flags, and we set up a certain width and height for the nav menu, so it will be sitting on the left hand side in a static position. All right. So this is pretty much setting up the alignment and the position of that menu. This is a quite important part of the CSS. And then the remaining part is just going to be some styling for our icons, the styling for the name, and also for different screen sizes, we also make sure the design for the navigation can be responsive as well. So I scroll down a bit for you to go through it. It's really simple stuff, and not much complicated CSS. You can understand it yourself if you have some basic understanding of CSS. All right. And also for the mobile navigation, I'm going to come to this one very quickly because we want to make sure that our navigation is responsive on the mobile as well. So once we build up the desktop view, I'll come to the mobile view. very quickly. So now we have the navigation done and the CSS file defined. If we're going back, you will see this one looks like this. Looks pretty ugly so far because the hovering effect isn't correct. And the reason is because we haven't defined the width of the header. So far the header is to take the whole width of the screen, but we only want the header to take a part, maybe 1/10 of the screen size. Alright, so going to the header.css, I'm going to copy and paste in that starting file as well. So for the header, we want the position to be fixed. Fixed means that it has to be there, no change. And we want to make sure it's top 0, left 0, bottom 0. So it's sitting definitely on the left hand side. Sitting on the far top, so it's going to overflow all other components, which is correct. And overflow Y auto. And also we want to make sure it's responsive on different screen size as well for that header. Make sure it's on a big screen, it has a width of 300. And on the smaller screens, make sure it has a screen size of 100 pixels. Alright, so going back, now you can see this header looks much better. It looks sitting on the correct position. Maybe we'll adjust it to the middle later on. But the hover effect is there. When you hover on it, it's showing. And the first one has been shown to the blue background because it has been set to active by default. Alright, so this one is working. That's all good. We close off this header. And now we are back to the navigation. Supposedly the header should be aligned in the middle like this, but so far we have it sitting on the top. Let me see if I make any mistakes here. I'm going back to the header to have a check. Oh, here I made a typo. That's supposed to be content instead of a content. So that's the correct class name for the bootstrap to a line item in the middle. So now if we're going back, you can see the navigation now is sitting at the very middle of the page. Okay? So the next job is going to handle the click events. And if you think about it, whenever the button you click on is supposed to take you to that right section. Say for example, in my original work, I click on About. It takes me to the About section. The Resume, take me to the Resume section. The traditional way of handling this is to using that ID name, right, to take you to that position. But if you use the ID name, the route will be changed. All right, let me show you. If I remove my browser a bit, you will see the difference. As you can see over here, so far the route is localhost 3000. If I click on About, it goes to the About section without affecting the routes. Traditionally, if you use the localhost 3000 and then you give something like this, hyphen, the hash key, and then you go to About, it also can take you to that section. Alright? So if you say, I want to go to Resume, it also takes you to that Resume. But this will change the route's name, which looks really ugly, not fancy. But the way to do so in JavaScript is trying to handle everything using JavaScript without affecting the routes. Okay, you can see the routes remain the same, but it goes to that section straight away. How do we do that? We're going to use a click events to handle this thing. So going back here, we want to write a click events for that. Say for example, on the anchor tag, we say whenever we click on this navigation button, we want to trigger an arrow function. And that thing is going to be called handle scroll to. And which one do we want to scroll to is up to the target. If we're going to the data over here, each object has a target. This is where we want the navigation to take us to. So here we say nav.target. And because we have created these functions, we have to define it over here, right? Otherwise we can't use it. So I copy the function name and go into the above to declare the function using the arrow function, constant that equals to, which is going to be an arrow function, like so. So now we have defined it. But this function must take the variable for it to work. It will take a section variable. Let's say a section variable is going to be a string. Okay. So now we have declared this function and we use it here. The job of this function is to handle the scroll effects. Alright, whenever we click on the button, it scrolls to the according section itself. And so far we have just pretty much done the settings for the navigation, and we leave it like so. The reason we couldn't finish it is because we only have the header here. We haven't built any section yet. So even when we click on the button, it wouldn't go anywhere. And once we finish all the section buildings, I'll go back to the section, I'll go back to the navigation to finalize the function. Alright, but so far we leave the function like so. Close off the navigation, close off the header, and to think about what's our next job. Our next job is going to be our hero section, like so. Let's just start it to build it. To create a hero section, what we're going to do is to, inside the section folder, create a new file. And the file is called hero.tsx, enter, and then rfc to create a boilerplate for the hero section. And then at the same time, we say hero.css, so we can have that CSS file. And then you want to link this CSS file back to your component file. So these two are combined together. And the next job is to think about how does this the hero section work. What do we need to include? We need to include a big title and also this automatic typing stuff, and also the social icon and also the background image. So that's a pretty cool and simple hero section. First thing first, and you think about it, is this going to be a client component or a server component? Well, it depends. You can build it as a server component because we do have all the things as a static data. There's no much interaction between the user and also the browser. And also you can also build it as a client component. It doesn't really matter. So let's try to build this one as a server component first. And what we're going to do is to delete this one and create a section tag, and that one give it ID of hero. And then we're going to have a class name, which is going to be a dflex because we want it to be display flex, and we want it to flex direction in column. And then after that, we want to justify content center. So that's pretty much like a typical class name if you want to align item in the middle. And once you have that, so inside the section we're going to create a container. So inside that section we'll create a container, and that container is going to wrap all of our contents. The first thing is going to be the h1 tag. The h1 tag is going to be a random name for the developer. You can put in your own name if you want to make this one your own work. A lot of people are leaving message to me to say that can I use your template straight away as my own work? Well, I would say that I show this one in public. Of course you can, but it's just a matter of concern that if everyone's doing the same kind of thing, you employer or potential employer might find out you copy this work from the online resources. So my suggestion is that you learn stuff from this project and you try to customize it for your own purpose. That's much better, right? You make it your own style. And you have that name done. And then the next thing, we have this big title here, which is this one. The next thing is going to be this highlights of this hero section, which is the automatic typing. So I'm going to create the static text first, which is the I am. And then we want to give a space after that, a space. So here, after it, we are going to initiate this auto typing stuff by using a third-party library, and that is going to be the React type. Okay, so over here we say import React typed. So we import React typed from the React typed. We have installed this third-party library at the very beginning of the video, so that's why we can use it here straight away. And down here, we just need to set up a framework for that. So what I will do, I'll just copy and paste in that setting. The way it works is that you include this React typed component straight away, and by telling that what kind of a text you want it to swap with. We have designer, developer, freelancers, and photographers, right? And you have to tell that set up the type speed, the back speed, and the back delay, and make it a loop, so it will keep typing and keep typing after finish one word. All right? So that's how they are going to work. So now we have this thing done. What I'm going to do is we try to see if this is going to work. Going back to our page, we are going to load our hero section on our home page, which is this one. So what I will do, I delete this. Inside a return, I'm going to give it angle brackets, empty angle brackets to wrap everything up. And then I'm going to include the hero section we have just built, this one. And then if we go into our project, let's see. It looks like we have encountered an error. Yep. So it tells us we cannot build it as a server component. We have to build it as a client component, and that is because when you use this React type, this is going to be an interaction. All right. So this thing must be finalized on the client side, not on the server side. So to make it simple, what we'll do is to over here say use client. Well, sometimes if the interaction you include any third parties that incurs any interactions, you have to build it as a client component, right? So this is a must do thing. And then once you've done that, you're going back, you will see these things there with that H1 title and also the introduction down here. This auto typing is working, and it will change this automatically. Once it's finalizing typing one word, it will change to the second one, right? Beautiful. So that thing is done. And the next part in the hero section is going to be our social links. So what I will do, I'll just simply copy and paste in all the social links. It's quite simple. We have our Twitter, we have our Facebook, Instagram, Google+, and LinkedIn. These are all coming from the box icon. Yeah, we use heavily the box icon in this project, not the Bootstrap icon, because it looks different from the Bootstrap one, and it's slightly nicer in my viewpoint. So we have finalized the template of this hero section, and the next job is going to do is the hero background page. So, and also all the CSS. What I will do, I copy and paste in everything. Firstly, for the hero section, we're going to make the position relative, width 100%, height 100 VH. That means the 100% of the vertical screen. And then we choose the background image from that image folder. The image folder is inside our public, our asset, and then this is the hero background, which is this one. It looks pretty shiny, right? And we make sure the background size is covered. And if I turn this one off, say for example, I comment that out for now, and if you're looking at it, now the background image is there. The title has been correctly fixed in terms of the title size. Everything looks good, but the problem is that it looks pretty shiny for the background image. It's sort of like the overflow the upfront title and doesn't give you enough color contrast, right? This is not good in terms of design. So that's why we need to put in a shadow on top of that image using a pseudo element. So this pseudo element will give them background color of a 0.8 transparency. It comes in as a white screen, okay? It takes the whole width and the whole height. So you put on that one, that looks much better, right? So this one looks much better. The problem is that our text words sort of like to be hidden underneath that. I'll fix it real quick, don't worry. So the way to fix that, on the title H1, I'm just gonna add in one more thing called position relative. We'll make the position relative, it'll stand out. See, this one jump out from the background screen and stand on top. Okay, that's how it works. And for the paragraph, we'll make it a position relative as well. So this one will stand out, and everything works fine now. So this one you can highlight it without any problem. Okay. For the span and for the social link, we just want to make sure that we give them correct color, and we give them the correct font size, the margin. The social link anchor tag, we want to make sure that we have a sufficient font size and make sure it's inline block for display. And the hover effect, when you hover on the social icon, and it's supposed to show that theme color blue. Okay, so what I will do, I'll probably give this one a position relative as well. So this one is on the top, and everything works fine now. Okay, that looks pretty cool. So now if you look at the project again, we have our background image sitting behind with a white screen on top of it. And also we have this huge title, and also with this subtitle where the highlights of the hero section is that inside the subtitle the words gets auto typed and keep looping. We have this social icon, we have the navigation bar on the side, which is hoverable and really, really cool. Yeah? So now we have just finalized the building of the hero section. The next part is going to be, let's have a look, our about section. Let's just jump in and do it right now. To start the about section, what we're going to do first is in the section folder, create a new file called about.tsx, enter. So you have that component file, and at the same time, you create a new file called about.css. So you will have the starting file, rfc, to have that boilerplate, and then we're going to import /about.css. So you have that CSS file linked to the component file. This is the first step. And the way that the about section works, is that we're going to create a section tag. It's like the typical HTML section tag. So section, enter, and then we give an ID to that about section, call it about, and also a class name as well with about, like so. And then inside here, because we are using the bootstrap, we're going to create a container to wrap everything up. So that's going to be a div.container to have that thing done. And inside the container, first we're going to create a section title. But I want you to have a look at the original project that I built. If you look at the section title of about, the facts, the skills, and also the following the resume, you will find out that all the section titles follow the same kind of a format. So that means this is going to be a reusable template. So the best way to handle this is to create a separate component to store that section title template. So what we're going to do is in the component folder, create a new file called section titles.tsx, enter, and then another file called section title.css, like so. And oops, we only need RFC. And inside that section title, we're going to create a template to hold everything. I have to think about what does the section title should contain. It contains the section name, right? So this thing is supposed to be dynamic and should be injected as a property value of that component. So what we're going to do here is we're going to first create a property variable and do the object structuring. One is going to be the title. And if you look at the original project, the other one will have a subtitle or a brief introduction of this section for each part, including the facts and the abouts. So what we're going to do here, instead of purely creating a title name, we're also going to write a bit of a brief for this section. So that's going to be a second property. We do another property destructuring. All right. And then because we are using TypeScript, this is a more accurate programming language, we have to define the data type for these two. The title is going to be in a string, and also the brief is also going to be in a string, like so. So now we have that defined. And for the section title, what we're going to do, we delete this. In the return, we're going to create a div section title tab. So we'll create something like so. And then inside here, we'll give it a h2 tag to hold the actual title name. And also down below, we'll give it a paragraph tag to hold the actual brief of that section. Done. All right, that's the entire code for the section title. Quite easy to understand. And also we need to finalize this one by building a CSS file. So what I'm going to do is to copy and paste in all the section title. With the section title, we want to align it in the center of the screen. And also for the h2, we'll give a bigger font size. We'll make sure it has the proper color and the margin and padding. And as you can notice that there's a kind of like a declaration between the paragraph and the title, and this thing is achieved by using the pseudo element like so. That's going to be a h2 before and a h2 after the pseudo elements. So we calculate the length of it. One thing is arranged in the middle, the other thing take the whole length. All right. And then for the paragraph, we just want to make sure the margin to bottom is 0. That's all. All right. So now we have the section title done. The beauty of it is that this section title will be reusable. Later on, whenever you build a new section, you don't have to create a section title from scratch. You could just call this section title component and then fit in that title and a brief content. So you will have a brand new section title for you. Let's try it here. So back to the about section, what we're going to do is to call that section title component. And you can see this thing has been successfully imported over here in the component folder. And now it has been here. But it has that curvy arrow line underneath because we haven't defined the title yet. So the title for this one is going to be about. And also we will have another one called a brief. The brief is going to be in a paragraph. So what I'm going to do is to copy and paste in that lorem for you. So we have the entire thing ready. So now we have the section title for the about. Okay. So to try if this thing is working, let's go ahead. So far it's not loading on our browser, and that is because we have not yet injected this about section into our homepage. So let's just do that. Inside our homepage, we'll create a new tag called div and give this one the ID of the ID. And then we're going to import this about like so. So now the about section has been successfully imported on the homepage. And if you look at it again, it's here. Alright. So the reason why it's not looking so good, and that is because we have not yet finalize the building, and also we have not given the certain CSS yet. So let me just try to see the section title CSS should be working. Oh yeah, I didn't import it here, so I import that section title .css like so. And now you go back, you will see the about section title is there, and it's looking the same as my original project, like so. Alright, so that's the first part. And after it, we're going to keep building the remaining section. And to do so, we're going to continue building by creating a row. Row is a bootstrap thing. Whenever you give the class name to a div as a row, it will take the whole row of the screen. And inside that row, everything is divided up by column. Each row contains 12 columns. And you can manually arrange how many columns each component takes. Alright? For example, we create a row first, and then inside this row, we're going to firstly create a column component that takes the 4 column. So with a column on large screen 4, that basically means that this is going to take a 4 component. And then after it, we're going to create another part, and that is going to be div.column on large screen -8. That's going to be 8 column. And if you add up, the 4 column plus 8 column equals to 12 column, which they will take the whole row. Alright, that's the way the bootstrap is working. And for each responsive design, either using the bootstrap or using material UI or using Tailwind, it all follow the same logic. It's all going to be the grilled system. Alright, so it's no big difference. You know one, it will be very easier to learn another one. And then we're going to give a bit of a padding to the top of the 4, and then make sure that the padding on the large screen is 0. And then give a customized class name content, because we're going to do some bit of more customized styling later on. And then for this 4 column, if you look at the original design, we want to put in the avatar or the image of that designer. And then the 8 column is going to be the content of that designer. So what we're going to do inside this 4 column, we import the image. And we haven't even located the image yet. Let me just show you. So inside the public folder and inside this asset and image folder, we have this profile image. So this is what we're going to use. But firstly, you need to import this one into this about section as the component. This is how the thing's going to work. So what I'm going to do is to import that profile image from the public folder asset image and the profile image.jpg. Alright, once you have that done, we can go to here and inject it as the image component. The way I'm trying to do is to import it as a Next.js image component. This one. Image, instead of using the traditional image tag like so. The reason is because this one gives you a much more comfortable loading, and even though your image size is really big, this will allow you to have that lazy loading. Alright, and the way it works is to give that a source route, which is going to be the image component, this one here, and then you're going to give a customized class name of image fluid. Image fluid is a bootstrap class name. Basically means that you're going to make this image responsive 100%. And alt is going to be empty, or you could say something like profile image. Alright, so like so. And now we have that image done. If you're going back, see if this one is working. Yep, the profile image has been successfully loaded. The reason why it looks ugly is because we haven't done the CSS part yet for the entire about section. Let's just keep building and do the CSS in the end. And later on, in the 8 column, what we're going to do is that we're first going to have a title. In this title, we're going to put in the designer's title, the job, like something like that. You can change this according to your own situation. And then we're going to give a bit of an introduction of yourself, just a very brief introduction underneath. So this is going to be italic. So this one thing, when it's finished building, this thing is going to be in italic. Alright. So now we have this 2 part done. And the thing afterwards is going to be our list introduction with your birthday, your personal website, your age, degree, so on and so forth, all the things. And to do that, we're going to create a new row below the paragraph. I'm going to say div row, like so. And inside here, if you look at it, it has been divided into 2 parts. In this row, this is going to take half the screen, half the row, and this is going to take half the row. So each row contains 12 columns, remember that? So we're going to do a div column large -6 for this one. And then you know that later on we're going to have a second half row, which also going to take 6 columns. So it's a 6 by 6. Add up together, it's going to be 12 in total. On the left hand side, what we're going to do is going to have the birthday, website, phone, and city. Alright, all comes in the list. So the easiest way for me to do is to put in that list over here, like so. We have that birthday, we have that website, the phone, the city, with also the box icon above that. On the right hand side, the 6th row, which is going to be your age and all the stuff. So what I'm going to do is to put in those links for your age, degree, email, and also your freelance. And you can also put in your current position if you're not a freelancer, like so. So now we have the left and right sides all together. And going back to here, have a look, and then you will see this one looks much better. And we have that image there, and we have that title, we have all of the bullet point introduction there. Alright, and one last thing for us to put in the content is this long description of yourself, okay, which is also comes in as a lorem and a paragraph. So what I'm going to do is to first we close off this the row inside, so you can see the whole structure of the template. So on the right hand side, a column, we put in the title, the italic description, the row that contains the bullet point, and then below it, we're going to put in this long paragraph. Alright, so that's the whole thing. And now if we're going back, every content has been successfully loaded. The last but not least job is for us to put in our CSS for the about, so it can look much nicer. Let us do that. But before we do so, I just noticed a tiny error for my template. We actually wrapped only the section title into our container. That's why this one looks slightly strange, because it's touching the edge of the screen. Supposedly we should have some margins on the left and right hand side. So the way to fix that is we take the whole row, this one, cut, and put it into the container and save, like so. So everything, all the rows must be wrapped inside a container for it to look like a proper. And now if you're going back to see, yep, the margin got added successfully in our new component. This is the localhost 3001, which is our current project. Everything's fine now. The last job is to make it look nicer by adding this about.css. So what I'm going to do is to copy and paste in. It's just going to be very typical settings for the font weight and font size. Remember, when we do the about, we actually give this a column a customized class name content. This is the position where we're going to use this content class name to handle it. So we restyle the title, we restyle the list, or the list item, the icon. We're supposed to give them a customized color to our theme color. And once we've done that, we're going back, you'll see, refresh. This looks much nicer with this beautifully designed angle. And if you look at the original, it looks very similar, or exactly the same as the original project. Beautiful. So now we have finished the building of the about section. Our next job, let's have a look, it's going to be the fact section. And in the fact section, we're going to have a chance to build this React counter that will allow you to count up the numbers while loading. If I refresh the page, you will see this number gets counted up while the page is loading. Let's just jump in and do it now. To create the counter section, what we're first going to do is that inside the section folder, create a new file called facts.tsx, like so, and then rfc to create a boilerplate. At the beginning of this video, I have installed that React count up dependency, which is this one. If you haven't installed that, please install for now. And as soon as you install that, we can import this React count up to finalize this section. But if you look at the original project, we have the template for each counter, which contains the icon, the number, and a brief description, or the title. Alright, so since it's sharing the same template, we're going to create a separate component which is for the counter item, and wrap that subcomponent into this parent component facts. Okay, so inside our component folder, we're going to create a new file called counter item.tsx, and then quickly create a file called counter item.css. And then rfc, after create a boilerplate, we're going to link that styling file back to this component file, counter item.css, like so. So now these two files are linked up together. The next job is to see how are we going to create this counter item template. This counter item template is going to take the property called item, and that item should contain many properties, like the icon, like the duration of the counter, like the beginning and the ending time of the counter, and also the name of that counter. Alright, so in this one, we're gonna take in a child component, a property item, and then because we are using TypeScript, we're gonna define this one with different property value. You're gonna take the icon as a string, and then you're gonna take the end time, which is a number. This is the how many seconds you want a counter to run, and that's going to be the duration, which is also going to be a number. And then the last one is going to be the name of that counter, which is also going to be a string. So after you set up all of these, what we can do is to set up the template over here. So we're going to create a div with a column of 3. So because we want each one take 3 columns only. Because you look at the original project, each one takes 3 columns. We have 4 of them. 3 times 4 equals to 12. So in total, this will take 12 columns, which equal to 1 row. Okay. So here it's going to be column large -3, like so. But we also want to be responsive on the different screen sizes. So if it's on the middle screen, we want it to take half of the screen. Okay. And we make sure that margin to top is 5, and also we have a margin to top on the middle screen is 0. Okay, so we set up the template for now. And then after that, inside, we're going to have a count box. We use this box to hold our counter item, inside which we're going to have now the icon injected first, and the class name of that icon will be our item.icon. So we can set this icon to be the property and enable it to be dynamic. And after that, we're going to set up our counter. So here is a situation where you import that React counter by saying counter, like so. So now you have imported from that build counter. Actually, it's imported from the wrong directory. I'll fix it real quick. I actually want it to be imported from React counter straight away. Yep. We import counter from React counter, and we use that component over here. Here you must define the starting time of it. So we want it to start from 0 second. Oops, must be wrapped by the curly braces. And then you're going to define the end time of it. The end time is going to be item.end, because we have set its end time as a property value over here. Okay, and then you're going to have to tell the duration of that counter is going to be item.duration. So once you've done that, our counter is set up. The last bit is going to be the name of our counter, which is going to be a paragraph, and then we say item.name, like so. Okay, everything has been set up for our counter item template. The next job is going to put in our CSS for it, like so. So in the CSS, we have make sure that the counter box takes a certain paddings on both sides, and also the margin, the width. For the icon, we're going to make sure it has a background of our theme color, give the border radius of 50 pixels, and also for the span, for the paragraph, we make sure we have the correct font size and font weight. Okay, so that's for the CSS. This part is done, and our next job is going to be finalizing our facts component or the section component. But to think about where the data came from, the data is supposed to come from a separate file with the static data only. And remember that previously, we have built a data file that contains the nav data, and now I'm just going to create another data array to hold the data for our counter, which is quite straightforward. And then here, I copy and paste in. We have a data array for our counter that contains 4 objects, each for each individual counter. That's the ID 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the property value has been set up with the duration and icon and name. Everything's ready. Okay, so now we jump back to the facts component to import that data, and we are ready to do the data mapping. So here I'm just going to do some setup before we start to build. I'm going to import that counter data from the data file. That's one. And then we are going to use some animations and interactions for this file. So we're going to import the use state and the use effect hook. Because we are using the use state hook, it's more than likely this one is going to be the client component. So we say use client to enable that. And so far that looks good to me. And down here in the fact section, we delete the original, and then we create a section and give the ID of facts, like so, and also a class name of facts as well. And inside this section, we're going to wrap everything inside a container as well. So we say d container, like that. And inside this container, we're first going to import our section title, like what we did before. Okay, so the section title must have a title property. We put in that facts, and they're also going to have a brief property. What I'm going to do is to put in the lorem paragraph to fill up this part, like so. Alright, so now we have our section title ready. To test it out, what we're going to do is to import our facts section into our home page to see if it works. After importing that, we're going back to our current project. As you can see, the section title of the facts is there. And then we're going back to our section component to continue build it. Must be inside this container. We create another row, and we use this row to hold our counter item. Okay, we're going to do all the data mapping over here. And we get the data from the counter data, which is our static file, but we want to put this thing into our local variable to handle it in a more proper way. So what I'm going to do is to create a local state variable, and I call it a counters, set counters, and that thing is going to be in a use state hook. The initial value of that use state hook is going to be our counter data, which is the one that we imported from the data file. Okay, so now instead of getting the data directly from the file, we actually use the data from the state variable over here. Okay, and the next job for us to do is to do the data mapping. So down here in the row, so we say counters.map. We map that into a counter. It's going to be an arrow function with a parentheses. We're going to map it into our counter item, which is we just built, and that's going to be our counter item. Close that one. And we know that each counter got a specific ID, so we must assign that ID as well. So we say key equals to counter.id. And also we want to pass that counter, each individual counter, as the item to our child component. So we say item equals to counter dot. Alright, so that's how we set it up. We map our counter data into our counter items. Beautiful. So now if we're looking at our project, as you can see, the data is there. Refresh it. And then you can see that thing is actually counting up with that data counting, number counting animation. Okay, but the problem is only when you looking at the counter and you refresh the page, you'll get to see that roundup animation. When the page gets loaded first, say for example, if I refresh on the home page over here, and when you scroll down to here, you don't get to see that count up effect. And that is because this loading, once the page gets loaded, the counter will finish that animation immediately. This is going to be the problem. We only want the counter animation to be triggered when this section gets scrolled. Alright? If I'm on over here on the home page top, the counter should not be initiated. How do we fix that problem? We must know when this section has been scrolled to. Alright? And then we're going to turn on the active status for this section to trigger that animation for the counter. Alright? So to solve this problem, what we can do is create a few more component, a few more state variable. One is going to be the scroll. We're going to have to know the scroll position of our page. Set scroll, and that is going to be the use state hook, and with the initial value of 0. And then the second state variable I'm going to create is active, set active, and that one is going to be a use state hook. Initially we want to set it to be false. As soon as we scroll to that fact section, the active status to return to true. Alright, so that's how the logic. And the next part is going to, how do we find out the scroll position of our page? We use the use effect hook to do so. So in this use effect hook, we put in the window events listener. We listen to the scroll behavior of the page. And then whenever the user scroll the page, we're going to reset the scroll position to the vertical position of the window. Alright, so this thing will be constantly changed whenever the scroll position changes. That's one thing. The second thing is going to be handle the active. How do we know if the user scroll position equals to the section position? Right? So we're going to have to write a function to handle the section alive, like so. So we say section position is going to be the document.query selector with ID facts. We know that we have set ID facts to this section already, so we're just using that win document query selector to find it. Once we find it, we have assign this fact position to a section position. All right, and then we say the position equals to the current scroll plus 500, and then we do the if statement. If our position is greater than but less than these two values, we're going to set the active status to true. And have a look at these two values. One is going to be the section position offset top, which is the top of the section, and the other one is going to be the entire height plus the height, which is going to be the bottom of the section. So basically what it means, if our current position is in the range of our fact section, we're going to set the active status to true, and then the counter is supposed to be triggered. Okay, so the last job to do is to write one more use effect hook. Whenever the scroll position changes, we want this function to be called. Whenever this function to be called, we're going to match the current scroll position with the top and the bottom of the fact section to decide whether this section should be active or not. Since we have defined so many local state variables, we're going to use it over here. So to rewrite it a bit, we will say that if the counter, put it on the second line, we'll say if the counter is ready, if it's ready, I'm going to ask if it's active. If it's active, I'm going to ask if the counter's dot length is greater than 0. If it's that, we're going to do the mapping. So we're going to do a bit of a more conditional checking before we do the final mapping of the data. Otherwise, we're going to pop up with an error. So we want to make sure the counter data is ready. We want to make sure that the section is active. We want to make sure the length of the counter is not a 0. And then we do the mapping. Okay, so this is the entire logic. So now let's just refresh a bit. Oops. So far there's going to be a tiny issue, but this will be solved real quick. We don't get to see the counter anymore. Before we're adding in all these fancy functions, we get to see the counter straight away, but why now it's disappearing? And that is because it will only be shown, the counter will only be mapped whenever the scroll position have passed the top and in the range of that counter section. So far, the counter section is so tiny, we haven't built the remaining page yet. That's why it wouldn't be able to scroll to that position yet. The current scroll position should be somewhere here, okay, on the top of the page. We wouldn't be able to reach the top of the fact section. That's why the counter wouldn't be able to show. But later on, when we build more sections, this one's supposed to show automatically. Let's just keep building the project. It will be solved real quick. The next section we're going to build is going to be the skills section, which contains the progressive bar and also with all of the skills you have that you want to demonstrate to your potential employer. Let's just jump in and do it now. So to create a skills section, what we're first going to do is in the sections folder, create a new file called skills.tsx and then enter RFC to have that boilerplate ready. And to think about, if you look at the original design, that each skill progressive bar follows the same kind of logic. It has a title, it has the bar percentage, and also it has this progressive bar body. Alright, so since it follows the same kind of a template, we're going to make this one a separate and isolated component. So what we're going to do is inside our component, create a new file called progressive, or progress bar, make it short, and then the .tsx, enter RFC to have the boilerplate ready, and then another new file called progress bar.css, and then we're going to import that thing back, import /progress bar.css. Okay, so now these two are linked up. We're going to design the child component first, because in the parent section component, it's only going to handle the data mapping, and we know that data is supposed to come from our data file over here. So what I'm going to do is to copy and paste in our data first, so when later on we're going to use it, the data will be ready. So the skill data comes in a format that contains a very limited information point, with the ID for each one, and also the percentage comes in as a string, and also the name of that progressive bar. Okay, if you have more skills to be listed, you can add more in this array, but for this project, I'm only demonstrating 6 progressive bar for your skills. And that's what it looks like. Okay, so now we have the data ready, we close that off, and we're going to start from the progressive bar because this is a child component. And inside the child component, we're going to have to take in the actual item component, which is a property that is going to be passed from the parent component. And also, we're going to check the status of this progress bar. So we're going to have a status. If it's active, we want to make sure the progressive bar shows. Otherwise, the progressive bar should be hidden. Let me show you. In the original project, if you refreshed it, you will see that this one is not showing. The progressive bar, the blue bar is missing. But as soon as I scroll to the right position, it starts to animate and show the full bar. This is what I mean by active status. We have to trigger an active status for the skill section for the progressive bar to be loaded. Okay, so that's what the status for. And now we have these two properties ready. Because we are using TypeScript, we need to define the property, the data type. For item, what we're going to do is item is going to be an object, and I don't need this curly braces, just delete that. For item, it's going to be an object, and we know that each item is going to contain the name, and which is going to be a string, and also a percentage, which is also going to be a string. That's the first one. And the second one we know is going to be our status. And we know that's going to be the Boolean, because it's either going to be true or false. If it's true, basically means the progress bar is under active status, and we're going to turn it to true, otherwise it's false. Okay, so now we have the data set up. The next part is going to be our template. In the return, we're going to create a new div and give it a class name called progress tab. And inside here, we're going to write a span with a class name of skill. And inside this one, we're going to load the item name. And also, we're going to give a bit of an icon, which is the percentage bar, the percentage sign. I give a class name of val. And then inside here, we're going to load it in item.percentage and with that percentage sign. Okay, that's the first bit. The second bit, we're going to create a new div, progress bar wrap, like so. And inside here, I'm going to put in our actual progress bar, like this. So inside this progress bar, it's a bootstrap progress bar, but the style is the key thing to focus on. We're going to first check if the progress bar is under the active status of true. If it's true, we're going to show the actual percentage. Otherwise, we're going to have the width of 1 pixel. Basically, we're going to hide the progressive bar. Okay, so that's the settings for this template. And the next job is to put in our progress bar CSS. Copy and paste in. As you can see, for the progress bar, we're going to give a certain height, and we want to make sure it has a certain padding. We transform the things to the uppercase and give a good font size and font weight. For the value, we're going to make it to flow to the right. This is the percentage sign. And also for the bar, we're going to give the background color of our theme color blue. Right? Very, very simple. So now we have this child component set up. We're going back to the parents component to do the mapping. And it's follow the same logic of that counter section that we just built. We're going to still use the use state hook and also the use effect hook. We're going to use these two. And also, we're going to import the skill data from our data file. And then, because we are using the use state hook, this is going to be in a client component. We're going to write this word. And inside here, we're going to set up a few local state variables. One is to use to hold our skill. Set skill. And that is going to be the use state hook. We use that to get the data from the static file, like so. And then the second and the third state variable is going to be the same as our previous section, which is the fact section. We're going to have a local variable scroll to record the scroll position, and also a local state variable active to find out if this section is actually active or not. Initially, it has been set to false, but as soon as we scroll the page and the scroll position matches the section position, we're going to turn this active position to true. And the remaining things is going to be exactly the same as what we did in the fact section. So what I will do, I'll quickly copy and paste in those functions. If you missed the explanation, you can go back to the video to see how I explain it in our fact section. It's exactly the same code. Alright, so now we are ready to do the data mapping. Inside our skills, what I'm going to do is to have a section with ID name of skills. The emit is currently not working. Section, oops, don't know what happened, but let me just retry it. We want to create a section. Section, yep, that seems to be working in this way. So I manually do it. We'll create an ID of skills, and then with the class name of skills as well, and the section BG. I want to have a slightly different background color. And inside here, everything must be wrapped inside a container, like so. And then the first part in the container is also going to be our section title. So we say section title. We're going to give the title property, and that is going to be skills. And the second property is going to be the brief. And again, I'm going to copy and paste in our L'Oreal paragraph. So now the section is done. This is the beauty when we use that component. It's absolutely reusable across the entire project. The next part is going to be our row inside the container. So we create a div called row, and with a customized class name as well. We say that to be skills content. Alright. So inside, we're going to do a mapping. But as you can see, this is not a standard mapping because we have the left-hand side mapping and the right-hand mapping, right? So we're going to do the left-hand side and set it up a 6 column. And on the right-hand side, we're going to set up a 6 column as well. So what I will do a div column large 6, like so. And just quickly copy that. Now we have our entire 12 column. The first column, we're going to do the mapping in a way like so. We say skills dot slice. Slice is a JavaScript function. Basically means it allows you to cut off part of the array. We want it to be starting from 0 to 3. Okay, index 0 to index 2. That's 0, 1, 2. 3 items. The 3 is not included. We want to cut off the first 3 and then map them into skill that progressive bar. So we do it like this, and here we say progress bar. We're gonna have to assign an ID, and that is going to be our skill.id, and then we're gonna pass in the status equals to active, and then item equals to skill, like so. So now we not only we pass in the item itself, but also we pass in the status of the active. And we know that the active status is to be handled by these two. When the user scrolls the page, we're going to check out if the user scroll position matches the range of our progressive bar section. If the scroll position is within the range of the section, we're going to set the active status to true. And whenever the scroll position changes, this function will be called again. So this one is keep updating itself. Alright, so and now we pass in that active status as a property value to our child component progressive bar. The progressive bar take that value over here and reflect it over here. All logic must be linked up. So we have this first part done. The right hand side is going to be the same, so I'm just going to copy and paste, and we know that's going to start from 3 and finish at 6. Okay, everything else is the same. It's just we're cutting off the data in half. If you have, say for example, 8 skills, this one's supposed to be changed to 4, and that starts from 4 to 8. Okay, so it's up to you. And now we have our skill section all ready, and we have the CSS linked in as well. So hopefully this one is all working, and let's just go back to our home page to put in our skills section. So here we say skills, put that in. This one has been successfully imported. And now we're going back. You will see the counter actually is working. but the skills section is not loading. That is because our page is not long enough. If we have the complete project, the scroll position can reach the top of the skills section. This progressive bar will be progressively loading. Okay, but as you can see, this fact section is actually working. If I reload it over here and reach that, as you can see, whenever I reach that fact section that we just built, this count up animation starts to work. Otherwise, it won't work. If we do not trigger that section active status, when I refresh from here, the animation will be finalized already, immediately actually. But now the animation of that section is depending on my scroll position. Only when I scroll to the facts section, the counting up animation will be triggered. Alright, that's the beauty with our settings, like so. So all of these are used to handle that scroll position and our section active status. So now we have finalized the building of the skills section. The next job is going to be one of the highlights of this project, the resume section. Let's just jump in and do it now. So to start off this resume section, we first want to make sure the resume section state is ready. So in the data file, we put in the resume data. Of course, you can update this data based on your personal requirement. This is just some random example data. Let's have a look at the data structure. The data structure for the resume is slightly more complicated than the remaining data structure. It contains the ID and category and also the content. The content is a subarray inside this object, which also contains the new array item, like this new object, and inside it contains the detail property, which is another array. So the structure of the resume is more complicated than the one that we saw before. Okay, but it contains all the summaries, education background, and professional experience from the individual person. So once we have this data ready, the next job is going to be our files. Inside the section folder, I want you to create a new file called resume.tsx. Hit enter, RFC to create a boilerplate for it, and then very quickly we're going to do is a resume.css, because later on we're going to do some stylings for this file. And then we're going to import /resume.css, like so. Close off the data. And then if you look at the original project, each resume item contains this kind of a subtitle, an introduction bit, and also some bullet point for the details. So it follows this very similar template. So what it tell you is that we can create a separate component, like the child component, to hold the resume template for each item. So what we're going to do is inside this components folder, create a new file called resume item.tsx, enter, and then at the same time resume item.css, enter. So now RFC to have that boilerplate, and then we're going to put back this resume item.css, link these two together. So now we have all the files ready. Okay, and the next thing to think about is that instead of loading the static data like what we did before directly from the data file, we import the data that has been exported from the data file. What I want to do for the resume section is to create a RESTful API endpoint for us to call the data from the backend. Alright, because the Nextjs have a specific way of handling the backend routes, and the way to do so is inside our API folder, create a new folder to server routes, and that thing is going to be called a resume. And you have a subfolder here, and inside this folder we create a file called route.ts. This route is going to be used to handle our GET request or any POST request, delete request, and put request, patch request, and to do with the database. Alright, even though we are not incurring any real database for this project, but we can still create a mock API endpoint for us to make a POST request and GET request. And the way to do so is that we're firstly going to import our resume data from our data folder, and then we're going to make the GET request to fetch data. And the way to do so is export async function. We're going to write a get function. It's going to be a get function. Get function is going to retrieve all the data we need, so it doesn't take in any parameters, but will return with a response.json item.json. And over here, we're going to response the JSON, which is the data that we fetched from our data file. This data file pretty much serves as a temporary database. And once we get the data from the database, we convert it into the JSON format data, so you can have these routes. If we have done this thing correctly, and let me open up a new browser, let's say localhost 3001/API/resume, refreshed it, you will now successfully have the chance to see the data that we fetched from the API endpoint that we just built. Localhost 3001/API/resume, and over here you can have all the data has been correctly loaded on our backend in a JSON format. Our next job is going to make the call, a GET request to this backend endpoint, and have the data ready to be served in our frontend template. Okay, so this is a much better way of handling data instead of getting it from the static file. Close this off. So the next thing to think about is where do we call the data, or where do we start to build? Do we start from the parent component, or do we start from the child component? I would recommend you to start from the child component, because eventually we're going to map the data into the resume item, which is the child component. Alright, so here in the child component, we're going to do an object destructuring, and this will be the property that is going to be passed in the end. And we're going to define the data type for it. It's going to be an object with a title that is going to be a string. Oops, if I could type, and it will have the period, and that is also going to be a string. And also we're going to have some brief, and that is going to be a string. And we're going to have some details, and that is going to be a string array. So to define a data type of string array, we're going to tell the computer that this is going to be an array using square brackets and put string inside it. So now we have all the data type defined. The next job is going to set up our template for our child component, and it's going to be a div resume item, like so. And then we're going to give a title. That title is going to be our item title. After it, we're going to load our period. It's going to be our item dot period. Double ampersand h5. Put in that item period again. Why is this? Because we're going to firstly check, does the item have a period property? If it does, we want to show that period. If you look at this original JSON array, not every one of them have that period. Say for example, in the summary, the period property contains an empty string. That is going to be nothing in JavaScript in the end. However, if you look at education and professional experience, the period does show some data. So we're going to firstly check if the property exists or contains some value, some valid value. If it does, we want to show that. Otherwise, this thing won't appear. That's the first part. The second part, we're going to show the brief. So inside of the paragraph, we're going to say item.brief, like so. And the last bit, if you look at the original project, it's going to show all this bullet point with the details, right? And we know that all the details at the backend has been contained inside the array, so we can do a data mapping here. So here, we create a list, and inside here, we want to do the data mapping. Firstly, we're going to check item details if that thing exists. If it does, we're going to secondly check the length of the details array. If the length of the details array is greater than 0, basically means it's not an empty array, we're going to then do the mapping. So we say items.details.map, and we're going to take two variables. One is each line, each item, and the other one is going to be the index. The index we're going to take, this comes in as a default second parameter. We have to take that and use it as a key. So now we are ready to map it into a list. And inside here, we want to put in the line item for each one. However, we must have a unique key because we're using the JavaScript higher order array function, and that index is going to be served as the key. Okay, so this is how we do it. Now we have to finalize the data mapping and all the template for our child component. The next job is going to put in our CSS for the child component to finalize it. It's just going to be very standard and basic settings. For the border left, we're going to make sure that we have some border settings in the colors of blue. If you look at the original, the border has this blue with some circle on the top that looks like a genuine resume, really beautiful. And that thing is achieved by all of those pseudo elements. This is the settings for the H4 title. This is setting for the H5 title. That's for the list. For that circle, it comes in as a pseudo element before. We make sure that the width and height both set to 16 pixels, border radius 50 pixels, and also we want to make sure it has a border of 2 pixels with the color of that blue. Alright, once you set up this, it'll be positioned fixed to the top corner over here. And we have that child component CSS done. We have the child template done. The CSS file has been linked in. Pretty much I'm so happy with this too. I'm going to close off for now. And now it's the time to deal with our parents component. In our parents component, the first thing we're going to do is to make the GET request from the backend RESTful API. Okay, and the way to do so is above everything, we create a asynchronous function, async function, and we're going to name it get resume data. And we're not going to put in any parameters, so this one is useless. And we say const response equals to await, because we are using async function, so we can say await the fetch. And here we're going to fetch from our backend, which is this one. Copy our backend route and put it over here, like so. So once we get the data from the backend, what we're going to do is to return response.json. Response.json will convert it into our JavaScript array that contains the JavaScript object, because essentially the JSON data will only be working on our backend routes, not in our file. We have to convert it into the programming language we are using to deal with the front-end template. Okay, and now we get the data over here. Since we're using the async function, we have to turn our function component to be an async one as well, so that we can use this data. And the way to use it is to create an item, and the item type is going to be an empty array or any, equals to await that function, get resume data. So we call this function inside our functional component. Because we are using async function, we can do the await thing. So once the data ready, we'll assign this data into our local variable item. So in this way, you don't have to create a local state variable or using that use effect hook to call the data. This is what we call a server component. Just pay attention to the differences. On the server component, you can get the data straight away on the server side and assign the data into a variable. You don't have to use the front-end hook to deal with it. This is much more efficient and much better for SEO. Okay, so now we have done this part. The next job is to create our template for the resume section. It's going to be in a section and tab, give the ID resume, and also in the class name resume as well. So once we've done those, inside here, everything must be wrapped in a container. And inside the container, the first thing we want to do is to create that section title using the child component we have already built with the title of resume. And also the brief is going to be the lorem paragraph. Put it over here. And now we have the section title done. The next part is going to be our official resume content. Everything must be wrapped in a row. So we say div row, create that. As you can see, the resume comes in as two parts, on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. The left-hand side have the summary and education category. The right-hand side has the professional experience category. Of course, how you want to design this template is up to you, because different persons have a different education background and professional experiences. And you might rearrange the template layout based on your own need as well, right? I'm just showing you based on the example data. So we need a left-hand side column and a right-hand side column. And for the left-hand side, we create a div column large 6, like so. And we know that on the right hand side it's going to be the same thing. So we're going to have 2 6 column, add up together, it's going to be in a 12 column. Okay, and the first part of it over here, we're going to have a title, say h3, and inside this we're going to create a class name called resume title, because we want to do a bit of a starting up for it later on. So that's going to be resume title, and over here we're going to put in our title. But remember, on the left hand side we're going to separate it into the summary part and the education part. So we have to get it specifically for our first category, which is the summary. And the way to do so, we know that item is going to be an array. To select a specific item inside the array, we use that index 0. Index 0, if you look at the backend, that's the array. Index 0 will be this one, the summary part. The index 1 will be the education. The index 2 will be the professional experience, right? So we get index 0, that's going to be the summary, and we want it category. Okay, so that's how we get it. Oh yeah, I missed that. This is going to be a plural. So now it's working. So we have the title ready, and the next part is going to be a data mapping. We want to map the first item inside the item array into our resume item. Okay, so we're going to firstly check if the items are ready. If it's ready, we're going to second check if the items.length is greater than 0. If it does, we're going to do the mapping. It's going to be items. We're going to pick up the first one using the index.content.map. Because if you look at the structure of the data, each one will have the content property. We want to fetch the content property of it to retrieve all of this information. Alright, so now we have that map done, and over here we're just going to say item, and that is going to be a mapping. We map that item into our resume item. So we say resume item. So here we need to pass in the key. The key is going to be the item's ID, and then we're going to pass in the entire item as the property value to the child component. You might notice there's a warning sign here showing you that curly underline, and this is because we are using the TypeScript. If you're using JavaScript, this is okay. You can go ahead and keep building. But we're using a TypeScript. This is going to be a more accurate programming language. So instead of saying item, we have to define the item's data type. Okay, so now with a colon after it, we're going to have to define this item is going to have an ID, which is going to be a number, and it's also going to have a title, which is going to be a string, and then it's going to have a period property, which is also going to be a string, and then we're going to have some brief, which is going to be a string, and then finally we're going to have some details, which is going to be a string array. Done. So now once you define all the data types of the item, you can see this curvy line disappear and everything works fine now. So this is the way, actually I like TypeScript. It actually allows you to achieve more features and amazing functionalities that the traditional JavaScript wouldn't be able to provide. It's more accurate, more efficient, it reduces the error at the runtime. Okay, so now we have this thing done. And the next thing is just going to be a very simple one. Let's just try it out for now to see if it's working. And the way to do so is in our home page, we're going to import that resume. And in our resume.css, I'm going to put in some settings for this. It's just a very typical one for the resume title. We're going to make sure the font size goes okay to 26 pixels, give us certain margins and font weight. Okay. And that's just for that, the h3 tag. So now let's just try if this one shows okay on our browser. Well, it looks much more beautiful. As you can see, with the subtitle, with the border correctly there, description, and all the details. The mapping is actually working, okay? And also, amazingly, if you notice above, for the skills section, I reloaded. This is where the count up animation gets triggered. This is where the skills section, the progress bar gets triggered. So that's because we have set the active status for each section. So only when the section becomes active, the animation will be triggered. Okay, so let's just focus now again on our resume section and keep building the remaining part. It's just going to be very simple stuff because the remaining part inside the left hand side, we're just going to copy this bit and paste it. Instead of using the first element, we're going to choose the second one, which is the index 1. And now do the mapping. Everything remains the same. If you're going back and check, education comes in, right, with that period. The period will only show if it exists. Very, very cool, huh? And for the right hand side, we're going to copy and paste in this one as well, but we're going to choose the third element inside of the array, which is the second index. Very, very easy to handle. So once we've done that, we saved it, and we're going back, you will see that thing comes in, got successfully mapped into our resume item. Okay, so this is the amazing and cool thing with the React way of web development, because you are allowed to do all this mapping instead of the hard coding, and it successfully also separates your data from your UI template. So later on, if you change your data, it doesn't affect your template at all. Say for example, I want to change some detailed information here. I want to change the period. I want to change the content. I want to change the description. You just need to update your database, all right? But you don't have to rewrite your code. It's a very successful separation of the data and also the template. And the mapping actually make the data much more efficient to be presented on the browser. So now we have successfully finalized the building of the resume. And let's have a look. The next part is going to be the portfolio. And I will run this portfolio section in our next tutorial. If you like my video, please subscribe my channel, like it, share it, and I will see you in the next video to finalize the building of this project. Thank you all for watching. Bye for now.